The American Egyptian Women of Influence podcast aims to be the American Egyptian culture podcast of choice. We believe that our knowledge and our participants' stories will greatly enhance understanding of both cultures. I'm Karen Leggett Aburaya. The American Egyptian Women of Influence podcast aims to be the American Egyptian culture podcast of choice. We believe that our knowledge and our participants' stories will greatly enhance understanding of both cultures. I'm Karen Leggett Aburaya. Today I'm speaking with Magda Saleh, Egypt's first prima ballerina. Born to an Egyptian father and a Scottish mother, Magda benefited from Egypt's association with the Soviet Union in the 1960s, when she and four other young ballerinas were invited to study with the world-renowned Bolshoi Ballet in Moscow. When they returned to Cairo, they danced before a totally enthusiastic audience, which included President Gamal Abdel Nasser. And then she even danced as a soloist back in Moscow with the Bolshoi. Magda has lived in the U.S. since the 1990s. Earning Her Peak was shown last year along with a documentary about Magda and the other dancers called A Footnote in Ballet History. From her home in New York with her husband, Egyptologist Jack Josephson, she promotes Egypt art, dance, and culture as often as possible, often with the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts at the Lincoln Center. Welcome, Magda.
Good morning, Karen. Welcome. I'm really delighted to meet you over the phone and be part of this podcast. It's my first podcast.
And what do you most want Americans to know about the arts in Egypt in general and dance in particular?
When people ask me about art in Egypt in my line, which is classical ballet, I tend to say, well, it all began with Napoleon. Anyway, his military endeavors did not succeed and he was packed off home. The British came in, but the ruler of Egypt who took over at that time, and it was the origin of the dynasty, the ruling dynasty of Egypt, was Muhammad Ali the Great. And he saw that breaking away from the bonds of the Ottoman Empire, which was enfeebled and failing, and turning to the West would be a great advantage. So he really, as I say, opened up this window on the West, and his successors pursued that. Fast forward to 1869, and we have the inauguration of the Suez Canal under Khedive Ismail, I believe Muhammad Ali's grandson. And that was when, for the festivities accompanying this incredible event, an opera house was built to receive all the royal and noble guests that came to attend the inauguration. And you may know, and people recall, that the Verdi was commissioned to compose an opera, Aida, with an Egyptian theme. The opera was not ready for the inauguration, it was only performed a couple of years later. So the opera was inaugurated with Verdi's Rigoletto, but also with the thought of performing in my brief career as a ballerina.
Let's actually come up to the 1950s and 60s when ballet was sort of again revived. It's a classical Western art, and you explained how it became important in Egypt in the 19th century. How did it become important again in Egypt at a time when nationalism and independence were being celebrated?
Well, this takes me back to my young days. And of course, I describe myself as a child of the Egyptian Revolution, though I was born earlier, and I don't need to be coy about my age since I've given away all sorts of dates in my life. So I was a young child, and a very small cog in a very big wheel, which is the unfolding destiny of Egypt. So I lived at a very specific period, the post-revolutionary Egypt, and it was a time. But the arts in Egypt, with the creation of the Opera House and other theaters in other cities, like Alexandria and Damanhur, well, the arts were performed continuously. And of course, Western influence was paramount. So there was theater, there was opera, there was music, there was ballet, and any other kind of activities. So there was a vast audience in Egypt, very cosmopolitan, many foreigners who had settled in Egypt, which was a real boom country after the creation of the Opera House, the Suez Canal especially, for these arts, and it was foreign troops that came. With the revolution came the creation of a Ministry of Culture of Egypt, and here I'd just like to pause and say that, of course, it was my very good fortune, and that of my compeers in the ballet and in the other arts, to have, as the founder of this ongoing Ministry of Culture, one of the three officers of the revolution, a man of immense culture and a quite unique personality by the name of Dr. Sarwat Orkesha. And he created, among other things in the Ministry of Culture, other departments, an Academy of the Arts. And within that Academy of the Arts was envisioned a ballet institute, along with cinema and theater, conservatoire of music, classical Arabic music, folklore, aesthetics and criticism. It's a very large enterprise. Our very good fortune also brought in teachers from the Soviet Union, from their most eminent ballet schools, from the Bolshoi, from the Cairo. So as you will see, we were very well grounded in the classical ballet.